September the 18th, 1970. Jimi Hendrix, regarded by millions as one of the most talented and original performers in modern pop music, is dead.
Jimi Hendrix found fame in Britain. He also lived and died here. There are few people who do not know his name or face. His spectacular live performances have ensured his elevation to rock icon.
He was an entertainer, and I think half that magic came from the fact that that guitar was a part of him.
He was just friggin' fearless. I love that about him.
You like him or you don't like him, but this is what you're gonna get.
Although his career spanned a mere 4 years, Jimi Hendrix altered the course of popular music and became one of the most influential musicians of all time.
Jimi had a brutal childhood. He and his brother went through a lot of orphanages. They were left alone a lot. He had to fend for himself a lot in his life.
He had a very poor relationship with his father and with his home.
There was something inside him, I think, that probably from a rough childhood and, some of the abuse that happened then that was starting to come out. I mean, he never really had a home.
As Jimi grew older, he took refuge in his own imagination, and soon his guitar, bought for him by his father for just $5. Jimi's childhood was not a happy one. His family were poverty-stricken, and Jimi increasingly withdrew into himself. Minor crimes were a feature of Jimi's teens until he joined the 101st Airborne Division, but was discharged because of injuries he received during training. Jimi's first love was always his guitar. He became a bit-part player with Sam Cooke, Little Richard, and the Isley Brothers. He also wrote and performed his own songs, playing for Peanuts here at the Café War in Greenwich Village.
Jimi came to me with an artist that I was already recording, a guy called Curtis Knight, who had some musical talents himself. And he was brought to me as a backup musician, but that's not how I recorded him, because it was very apparent that he was the man. And following the sessions, I wrote a small agreement that he understood to be an artist agreement, and that was his first artist agreement.
But interest in Jimi was now growing.
My partner, Andrew Oldham, who managed the Rolling Stones, we were, I think, really just living in the summer of '66 in New York. And Keith Richards had a girlfriend called Linda Keith, who was a friend of Andrew's wife. And she persuaded us to go to a club called Ondine's, which was under the 59th Bridge. It was a very in club that year. And it was a bit of a diplomatic situation because she was obviously having a relationship with this guy called Jimi Hendrix, who we went to see. Andrew was in you could say, an upset stage because he'd overdone the non-prescription chemicals. So we went to see this guy, and I thought he was absolutely fantastic. The group, it was just everything blitzed and blazed. It was magnificent. I was absolutely knocked out. And I said to Andrew after I shook him and he came round a bit, I said, we should sign him. He said, who? I said, this guy we've just seen. And he said, guitarists never happen.
Jimmy got some notoriety, and one of rock and roll's greatest bass players, Chas Chandler of the Animals, came through one day and heard about him. Came in and sat at this club, and the first time he saw Jimmy play, he had a milkshake in front of him, and here comes Hendrix blaring away, amps way up to the top, and he spilled this milkshake all over him. He couldn't believe that nobody had signed this guy up before.
We're back in London, and Eric calls up, Eric Clapton, and says that we're doing a gig tonight at University College. Could you please come? Because the guest we've got tonight is just probably the greatest guy I've ever met. We all turned up, and Eric had played a couple of numbers when he stops and did the most phenomenal introduction for this guy. And out came Jimi Hendrix. And he played the same set he played in New York. But it was like 10 steps up from what he played before, because the crowd was so much bigger. And I looked at Andrew looked at me, and we both agreed, yeah, we've got to sign him. It was too late. Little did we know that Linda Keith had taken Chas Chandler, and he signed him.
I found out from the grapevine that he was supposedly whisked off by Chandler, which I believe. He had no reason to be off otherwise. And he and Mike Jeffries together started managing him and promoting him. And I think they did a magnificent job.
Jimmy's musical career took off when he came to England. He was talent scouted by Chas Chandler, bass player with a high-ranking British band, The Animals.
Well, Chas had a big thing about a song called Hey Joe that was written by Tim Rose, and he wanted to record it with somebody. And while he was in New York, he was looking for talent because he knew that he was leaving The Animals. And Linda Keith, who was an early Rolling Stones girlfriend, had already had Andrew Oldham down to see Jimmy in Greenwich Village, and Andrew had said something along the lines of guitarists never make it, and turned him down. And then, because she knew Chas, and Chas was in town, she took Chas down there. Chas saw Jimmy, and one of his opening numbers was Hey Joe, and that was what clinched it for Chas, because he thought, that's the number I've always wanted to do, you know?
I got a tap on the shoulder. I looked up and it was Chas Chandler. I hadn't seen a Chas for years because the Animals, he left the Animals. We're old friends. I started my singing career singing with the Animals, and he tapped me on the shoulder, and these was his very words. I want you to meet the new king, because I was king of the hill in those days. So I said, oh yeah, and I turned around and said, Jimi Hendrix.